At dinner, Dad shouted, "Either give your room to your sister or pack your things." I didn't cry. I bought the house across the street and waved from my office window. You know that feeling when your entire world gets flipped upside down in a single, brutal moment? That heart-stopping, gut-punching realization that everything you thought you knew about your family was a lie? Well, I've lived it. And let me tell you, the truth, when it finally comes out, hits harder than any pot roast Dad ever slammed on the table. It was a regular Sunday dinner, you know, the kind where the smell of roasting meat and simmering tension always filled the air at my parents' house in Columbus, Ohio. I was doing my usual, meticulously arranging the silverware, making sure every fork was perfectly aligned. My younger sister, Madison, burst in from the living room, waving her phone like it was an Olympic gold medal. "I'm up to 20,000 followers now," she chirped. "The sponsorship offers are rolling in." I saw my dad's proud nod. My mom beamed, tucking a perfectly styled strand of hair behind her ear. "That's wonderful, sweetie," she cooed. "Your hard work is really paying off." I set the last knife down and slipped into my chair. Invisible, as always. Here I was, 27 years old, still setting the table like I was 12, still living in my childhood bedroom. Madison, 2 years younger, was already a social media sensation, commanding the spotlight while I was just there. Then Mom and Dad exchanged that look. You know, the one where you can tell they've rehearsed something. Mom cleared her throat, her voice dripping with that syrupy sweetness she used when she wanted something. "Alexandra, honey," she began, pushing the mashed potatoes my way. "We need to discuss your room." My fork froze midair. "Madison needs it for her studio," Mom continued, smiling like she was offering me a gift, not an eviction notice. "The lighting's better, and she needs more space for her equipment." Before I could even breathe, Dad slammed his fist on the table. The water glasses jumped. "Either give it up or get out of this house," he snapped, all pretense of a discussion gone. "It's time you found your own place anyway." Madison smirked, twirling her blonde hair. "It's not like you need space to shuffle papers," she said with a dismissive shrug. The table went silent. Everyone just stared, waiting for the tears, the protest. But I just cut a piece of pot roast, put it in my mouth, and chewed slowly. My face showed nothing. But inside? Inside my head, a whole different scene was playing out. That 10 by 12 bedroom wasn't just a sleeping space. It was my sanctuary, my office, the command center of a life they knew absolutely nothing about. My shelves were lined with finance books I'd installed myself. My modest desk held a computer that frequently displayed an investment portfolio worth millions. While they were busy watching Madison perform in talent shows and school plays, I was working. Weekend jobs through high school. Online courses in financial management during college. Building my consulting business, client by client, dollar by dollar. I glanced down at my phone under the table, swiping past apartment listings I'd been browsing all week. I'd been planning my escape for years, saving and investing, all while they thought I was just job hunting between temp positions. A vivid memory flashed back to when I was 14. I could still feel the weight of that shoebox in my hands, 780 crumpled dollars, every tip from my weekend diner shifts. Enough for the laptop I desperately needed. "Alexandra," Mom had said that afternoon, standing in my doorway with that same sweet smile, "Madison needs video equipment for her school project. The one that might get her noticed by that arts program." I remembered Dad just taking the box from my hands without asking, how they'd both spoken over my protests. "Your sister needs this for her future," Dad had said, firm and final. I locked myself in the bathroom after that, the cold tile against my knees as I sobbed silently. That day, I made a vow. I would never depend on them again. That was the day I understood my place, the invisible child whose achievements would always be dismissed as just a spreadsheet hobby. 13 years later, nothing had changed. Except me. I placed my napkin beside my plate and stood up. My chair slid back, barely making a sound. "I understand," I said, my voice steady, clear. "I'll have an answer by next Sunday." Madison's mouth dropped slightly, her smugness replaced by confusion. Mom and Dad exchanged glances. This wasn't the reaction they expected. They wanted tears, begging, the old Alexandra who always gave in. But from the end of the table, my younger brother Eli watched me. Not with amusement, but with something that looked almost like concern. At 18, he was finally starting to see our family dynamics with clearer eyes. "Alexandra," Mom began, but I was already walking toward the stairs, my back straight, my steps measured. "We can discuss the details later," I said over my shoulder. "Madison, make a list of what changes you want to make to the room. I'll need to know what to prepare for." Behind me, their voices resumed, already discussing paint colors and lighting setups for Madison's new studio. They'd already forgotten I was leaving the room, just as they had always forgotten I was in it. In the privacy of my bedroom, I closed the door and pulled out my phone. I scrolled to a contact I'd added months ago but never dared to call. Until now. "Marjorie Klein," a professional voice answered on the second ring. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of years begin to lift from my shoulders. "Marjorie, this is Alexandra Pierce," I said, looking out my window at the "for sale" sign across the street, the one that had caught my eye weeks ago. "I'm ready to make that move we discussed." The very next morning, Dad's laptop sat unguarded on the kitchen counter, his email open like a treasure map. I glanced over my shoulder. The house was empty, save for the hum of the dishwasher. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. This isn't like me, this intrusion into someone else's digital space. But then again, neither was their ultimatum about my room. I clicked on a folder labeled Family Finances. The screen filled with spreadsheets that made my stomach clench. Credit card statements stretched endlessly, a digital tapestry of debt I never knew existed. $180,000. The number blinked at me from the bottom of the screen. $180,000 my parents had racked up supporting Madison's influencer career. Line after line told the story: camera equipment, lighting rigs, professional editing software. A $3,000 charge from last month for a weekend workshop with some social media guru in Chicago. All labeled as business expenses in Dad's meticulous notes. I dug deeper, finding an email thread between my parents discussing a second mortgage. The house I grew up in, leveraged for Madison's Instagram fantasy. A new message notification popped up: Madison to her talent agency. I shouldn't open it, but I did anyway. "I'm projecting to hit 50K followers by next month," she wrote. I checked her actual numbers on a dashboard Dad had bookmarked. 19,723, less than half what she was claiming. The front door rattled. I slammed the laptop shut and drifted toward the stairs, my heart hammering against my ribs. Mom walked in with grocery bags, barely glancing my way. "Alexandra," she called. As I reached the landing, "Don't forget Sunday's deadline. Madison's been making plans for that room for weeks." I paused, not turning around. "My financial paperwork. We'll box it all up for you." Mom interrupted, the false sweetness in her voice making my teeth ache. Though some of it might accidentally get thrown away during cleaning. "You know how that happens." Her casual threat settled over me like a winter chill. 7 days. That's all I had before they expected me to surrender my space, and with it, any proof of the life I'd built. I grabbed my laptop and drove straight to Crimson Cup Coffee, my unofficial second office. The barista nodded, already making my usual black coffee. No room. Settled in my corner booth, I opened my own financial dashboard. The numbers glowed back at me. $2.7 million in company earnings this fiscal year. 3 full-time employees. Clients across 4 countries. I took a long sip of coffee, letting the bitter warmth fill me. A quiet confidence replaced the lifelong doubt that had shadowed me since childhood. They never saw me. Maybe they never will. My phone buzzed. A text from Marjorie Klein, the realtor. "Found 3 properties matching your criteria. Available to view this afternoon." I stared at the message, a plan crystallizing in my mind. This wasn't just about finding somewhere to live anymore. "I won't just leave," I whispered to my screen. "I'll make a statement they can't ignore." I texted Marjorie back. "Yes." Looking for something specific. Preferably visible from my parents' house. Her response was almost immediate. "I have just the place. Meet at 3 p.m. I smiled for the first time in days. Perfect. 3 hours later, Marjorie's sleek car pulled up to a 2-story colonial directly across from my parents' house. That for sale sign I'd been eyeing for weeks stood proudly in the front yard. "This is exactly what I want," I told Marjorie as we walked up the stone path. "Something they'll see every single day." Marjorie's professional veneer cracked slightly, her eyebrow raising. "Interesting choice of words," she said, unlocking the door. "Most clients talk about what they want to see, not what they want others to see." Before I could respond, someone called my name from the sidewalk. Chloe Baxter waved, crossing the street with a folder tucked under her arm. Her auburn hair caught the afternoon sun. "I brought those property listings you asked about," she said, climbing the steps to join us. "But I see Marjorie's already got you covered." Chloe had believed in me since college, when I'd shown her my business plan scrawled on coffee shop napkins. While everyone else saw pipe dreams, she saw potential. "Alexandra's financials have been pre-approved," Marjorie explained as we toured the house. "The sellers are motivated. We could fast-track this if you're serious." The master bedroom overlooked my parents' house. I stood at the window, imagining waking up to this view every morning. A daily reminder of what I'd built and what they failed to see. "My bank manager was impressed with your statements," Marjorie continued, making notes on her tablet. "Not many 27-year-olds qualify for a mortgage this size without co-signers." My phone buzzed again. A text from Eli. "Whatever you're planning, you deserve better than this." I stared at his message, surprised. When did my little brother start noticing what was happening? When did he start taking my side? "I'll take it," I told Marjorie, tucking my phone away. "How quickly can we close?" "Wednesday if we push." Her eyes widened slightly. "That's incredibly fast." "Are you sure?" "Absolutely," I said, already calculating the down payment. "I'll transfer the funds tonight." Later, sitting at the kitchen table while my parents and Madison discussed her brand strategy, I signed the preliminary papers Marjorie emailed over. My parents still thought I was job hunting, completely unaware that their invisible daughter was about to become their highly visible neighbor. The money transferred with a single click, a substantial down payment that represented years of work they never bothered to ask about. The bittersweet realization settled over me. I was buying a home, but potentially losing my family. Or maybe I lost them years ago, and I was only now accepting it. Pride replaced the hollow ache. I built this success without their knowledge or support, without their belief. Maybe that made it more mine than anything else could. As Madison laughed about her latest sponsorship prospect, a fleeting doubt crossed my mind. Is this revenge? Or freedom? Perhaps it's both. The morning sun filtered through my curtains as I opened my eyes to a rustling sound. Mom stood by my bookshelf, a garbage bag in one hand, several of my finance folders in the other. "What are you doing?" I asked, sitting up quickly. "Just cleaning, sweetie," she said, that honeyed tone coating her words. These old papers were gathering dust. I slid out of bed and crossed the room in 3 steps, taking the folders from her hands. "These are important documents." "Oh, Alexandra," she laughed lightly. "You and your paperwork." Madison needs this space to be pristine for her equipment. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. A notification from Madison's Instagram. A family photo from last Christmas, her caption reading, "Making room for my dream studio." So blessed to have supportive parents. #influencerlife, #dream coming true. I bit the inside of my cheek. 63 likes already, most from people who'd never set foot in our house. "I thought we agreed Sunday was moving day," I said, carefully returning the folders to their proper place. Mom sighed, tying the garbage bag. "Plans change. Madison's equipment arrives Wednesday now, not Sunday." She patted my shoulder. "You're always so adaptable, honey. That's what I love about you." Adaptable. The word they used when they meant invisible. Downstairs, Dad sat at the kitchen table, coffee mug in hand, newspaper spread before him. His eyes flicked up as I entered, then back to the sports section. "Morning," I said, pouring myself coffee. "Some people in this house don't understand sacrifice," he muttered, "ungrateful children taking advantage." The irony burned worse than the coffee. I said nothing, spreading peanut butter on toast, calculating the hours until I could leave this house forever. That evening, relatives gathered around our dining table for Mom's monthly family dinner. Aunt Cheryl passed the green beans while Uncle Jim described his golf game in excruciating detail. I pushed food around my plate, half listening, until Mom tapped her spoon. "We have exciting news," she announced, her smile wide and practiced. "Madison has a potential sponsorship with a major cosmetics brand. They're sending professional equipment for her videos." Aunt Cheryl clapped her hands. "That's wonderful." "Alexandra's giving up her bedroom for Madison's studio," Mom continued, as if I'd enthusiastically volunteered. Such a supportive sister. All eyes turned to me, expecting the dutiful daughter act. I smiled tightly and raised my water glass. Family supports family, right? Later that night, my phone lit up with a text from Marjorie. "Found it. The perfect house. For bedrooms, directly across from your parents. Virtual tour tomorrow? AD." I stared at the message, something like hope unfurling in my chest. I typed back, "Yes, first thing." The virtual tour revealed high ceilings and hardwood floors, but it was the office that stopped my breath. A spacious room with built-in bookshelves and a bay window overlooking my parents' front door. I could sit at my desk and watch them come and go while they'd never see me working. "What do you think?" Marjorie asked through the video call. "It's perfect," I whispered, unexpected tears blurring my vision. "How quickly can we close?" Marjorie's face lit up with determination. "With your financials and my connections, we can have keys in your hand Wednesday morning." Wednesday, I repeated, thinking of Madison's equipment delivery. The timing wasn't coincidental. It was justice. The signing happened Tuesday afternoon, papers spread across a mahogany table in Marjorie's office. My hand trembled slightly as I signed the final document, a mixture of terror and triumph coursing through me. "Alexandra," Marjorie said as she gathered the papers, her voice unusually soft. "In 20 years of real estate, I've never seen someone your age this prepared." I blinked rapidly, unprepared for the warmth that spread through my chest at her words. Back home, I was carefully organizing client files when my bedroom door swung open without a knock. Madison strode in, measuring tape in hand, eyes already scanning my walls. "Can I help you with something?" I asked, not looking up from my desk. "Just measuring for my lighting setup," she said, stretching the tape across one wall. "This space is barely adequate, but I'll make it work." I continued typing, my keystrokes deliberately calm. "I see. My brand is on the verge of $1 million valuation," she continued, pacing the perimeter of my room. "I need this space more than you do. It's not like you're doing anything important with it." If she only knew the irony, the financial empire I'd built while she collected followers and free makeup samples. "We'll see what happens Sunday," I said, saving my document. Madison laughed, the sound sharp and dismissive. "Mom and Dad already decided. You don't have a choice." I looked up then, meeting her eyes directly. A small, secretive smile curved my lips. "Everyone has choices. Some just take longer to make them." Confusion flickered across her face before she rolled her eyes and left, the door banging shut behind her. That night, Chloe arrived with empty boxes after my family left for their weekly movie night. "Operation Independence is a go," she whispered, pulling packing tape from her purse. "I've got the essentials list." I hugged her tightly. "Thank you." We worked quickly, packing my most important possessions while leaving enough to maintain the illusion I was still living there. My college friends arrived an hour later with more boxes and quiet determination. "Eli texted," Chloe said, taping another box. "Your parents decided to get ice cream. He'll stall them." My brother's unexpected alliance warmed something in me that had been cold for years. Marjorie called past midnight with confirmation. "We're set for 9 a.m. closing. The movers will arrive at your parents' house at 10 while everyone's at work." Wednesday morning dawned clear and bright. I stood on the sidewalk watching Marjorie's car approach, keys dangling from her fingers as she stepped out. "Congratulations, homeowner," she said, pressing the keys into my palm. The movers arrived precisely at 10, efficient and discreet. I directed them through my childhood home, pointing out what to take and what to leave. My desk, my books, my clothes, the physical manifestations of a life kept hidden for years. By noon, I stood in my new master bedroom, watching the movers assemble my bed frame. The window offered a perfect view of my parents' house, the bedroom that had been mine for 27 years now visible from across the street. "Where do you want this desk, ma'am?" one of the movers asked, gesturing to my workstation. "In the office," I said, positioned to face the front window. Chloe arrived with lunch as the movers finished, her eyes wide as she explored my new home. "This is gorgeous, Alex, and huge." We sat on the floor of my new living room, eating sandwiches amid half-unpacked boxes. "Are you doing this for revenge?" she asked quietly. "Making them see what they missed?" I considered her question, watching sunlight pattern the hardwood floors. "This isn't about revenge," I said finally. "It's about becoming visible." That evening, I arranged my important papers in a leather portfolio folder: deed, financial statements, company information, evidence of the life I'd built while they weren't looking. Standing before my bathroom mirror, I practiced my expression, ensuring no anger or hurt showed through. Sunday's revelation needed to be delivered with calm confidence, not emotional outbursts. I selected my outfit for Sunday's appearance: a tailored navy blazer, cream silk blouse, and my grandmother's pearl earrings. Professional but familiar, the Alexandra they knew, but finally seen clearly. As the last box was unpacked, I returned briefly to my parents' house. In my stripped bedroom, I placed my childhood teddy bear against the pillow, the only personal item remaining. A silent goodbye to the girl who had lived in the shadows. Saturday night, I stood at my new bedroom window, watching lights glow across the street. Madison's car pulled up, friends spilling out laughing. Through the upstairs window, I could see them touring my empty room, Madison gesturing expansively about her plans. My phone buzzed with a text from Eli. "They think you're staying with Chloe." "What are you really doing?" I smiled, typing back, "Come to coffee tomorrow. You'll want to see this." Placing my phone down, I walked through my silent house, fingertips trailing along walls that belonged entirely to me. On the entry table, I positioned the deed folder precisely in the center. "Tomorrow," I whispered to the empty house, "they'll finally see me." Sunday morning arrived with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. I adjusted my blazer, charcoal gray, tailored perfectly, as I crossed the street toward my parents' house. The weight of the deed folder in my hand felt substantial, grounding. Through the front window, I could see them gathered around the kitchen table, my former prison, now just a stage for what came next. I knocked twice, sharp and confident. Mom answered, her smile faltering when she saw my professional attire. "Alexandra? We weren't expecting you so early." Her eyes darted to the street behind me, searching for Chloe's car. "Where did you park?" "I walked," I said simply, stepping past her into the foyer. The kitchen fell silent as I entered. Dad looked up from his newspaper, Madison from her phone. Only Eli offered a genuine, "Good morning." I poured myself coffee from the pot on the counter, an action I'd performed thousands of times in this house. Today, it felt different, a choice rather than an obligation. "I thought you'd be bringing your things," Madison said, her tone sweet but her eyes calculating. "I've already picked out paint samples for the walls, thinking of a blush pink with gold accents for my backdrop wall." I settled into my usual chair, crossing my legs casually. "That sounds nice." Madison launched into detailed renovation plans, describing lighting setups and equipment placement. I sipped my coffee, nodding at appropriate intervals, while watching Dad's impatience build. The timing had to be perfect. "When are you moving your things?" Dad finally interrupted, folding his newspaper with a crisp snap. The room stilled, all eyes on me. This was the moment I'd rehearsed 100 times. "I already did," I replied, my voice steady. Wednesday was my first day, actually. Mom's coffee cup clinked against its saucer. "Staying with Chloe isn't a real solution, Alexandra. You need to think about this rationally." Dad laughed, the sound devoid of humor. "You'll be back when you can't afford rent. The real world is expensive, especially for someone with your employment history." Madison reached across the table, patting my hand with artificial concern. "Don't be dramatic just because you're jealous of my success. We all have our paths, even if yours is taking longer to develop." They presented a united front, so confident in their assumptions. But for the first time, I noticed a flicker of unease in Mom's eyes as I remained unruffled by their dismissals. "Thank you all for your concern," I said, placing the folder on the coffee table with deliberate slowness. "But I'm not renting. I bought a house." The statement hung in the air, rearranging the molecules between us. I let the silence stretch, savoring the shifting expressions across their faces. Confusion. Disbelief. The first edge of alarm. The one across the street, actually. I turned slightly in my chair, pointing through the front window at my new home, 3 stories of brick and character directly in their line of sight. Mom's coffee cup slipped from her fingers, splashing brown liquid across the white tablecloth. Dad's mouth opened and closed without sound. Madison sat frozen, her Instagram post forgotten mid-type. "How could you afford that?" Eli asked, breaking the stunned silence. There was no judgment in his voice, only genuine amazement. I straightened my shoulders, embracing the truth I'd hidden for years. "I own a financial consulting business." "A what?" Dad's voice cracked. "A financial consulting firm. We manage portfolios and investment strategies for clients across the country." I kept my tone matter-of-fact, as if discussing the weather. "We crossed $2.7 million in revenue last quarter." Years of dismissal hung in the balance as I let them process this information. Eli's eyes widened, respect dawning in his expression. Mom recovered first, her smile tight. "It's probably just a starter home with a small mortgage. That neighborhood has become quite affordable lately." I slid financial statements across the table. "I paid 60% down. The rest is financed at 2.8%. Madison's phone slipped from her hand, clattering onto her plate. "You've been lying about your job." Dad's face reddened as he slammed his palm against the table. "No," I corrected him calmly. "You've been assuming I was unsuccessful. You never actually asked what I do." The distinction landed like a physical blow. Dad's mouth snapped shut. Mom stood abruptly, grabbing her phone. "I need to call Aunt Patricia." This impulsive decision. "Go ahead," I said, sipping my coffee. "She already knows. She's coming to my housewarming party next weekend." Within an hour, the family machinery activated its defense systems. Mom called 3 relatives, her voice growing increasingly strained as their responses proved disappointingly supportive of my brave new chapter. Madison posted a vague story about toxic family drama that garnered minimal engagement compared to her usual content. Through the window, I watched Mr. Johnson from next door slow his morning walk to admire the antique writing desk being carried into my front door by professional movers. The Neighborhood Whisper Network had already activated. Alexandra Pierce, successful businesswoman, moving into the Henderson property. The doorbell rang and Chloe entered with a potted fiddle-leaf fig and a bottle of champagne. "Housewarming gift for the new homeowner," she announced, ignoring the tension thickening the air. "Thank you," I said, accepting both with genuine warmth. The contrast between her authentic support and my family's calculated reactions couldn't be clearer. Eli stood, glancing between our parents and me. "Can I see your new place, Alex?" The request represented more than curiosity. It was the first crack in the family's united front. His willingness to cross the street with me carried weight beyond the physical journey. "Of course," I said, gathering my things. "Anytime." As we prepared to leave, Dad cleared his throat. "We should discuss your future visits. Sunday dinners are a family tradition." "I'm still family," I interrupted gently, "just living across the street instead of upstairs." Mom's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Of course you are, we're just trying to understand this sudden change." "Not sudden," I corrected her, "just finally visible." Through the window, I noticed Marjorie's car pulling up to the corner market where Mom buys her weekly groceries, right on schedule. By afternoon, the entire neighborhood would know the property value of my new home and the substantial down payment I made. As I walked toward the door with Eli and Chloe, a delivery van stopped in front of my house. The driver carried an elaborate arrangement of flowers to my porch, a congratulatory gift from my business partners, strategically timed and perfectly visible from my parents' front window. I turned back once before leaving, taking in the tableau of my stunned family. Madison frantically checking her phone as notifications about an expose on fake followers flooded her screen. Mom and Dad exchanging worried glances, the unpaid second mortgage application sitting in Dad's email draft suddenly feeling more precarious. Success is often built in quiet rooms, I said softly, while others are performing. The door closed behind us with a gentle click, separating past from future with half an inch of polished oak. Across the street, my house, my actual home, stood waiting, windows gleaming in the Sunday morning light. 2 weeks later, the doorbell chimed through my quiet home, interrupting my morning coffee ritual. Through the peephole, I spotted my mother's perfectly coiffed hair and the edge of what appeared to be a pie dish. I took a deep breath, straightened my shoulders, and opened the door with a neutral expression. "Alexandra, sweetheart," Mom held up a perfectly golden encrusted apple pie, steam still rising from the lattice top. "I made your favorite. We should talk." I stepped aside, allowing her into the entryway of my new home. Her eyes darted around, taking in the tasteful furnishings, the spacious layout, the unmistakable signs of success she never bothered to notice before. "This is quite something you've done here," she said, placing the pie on my kitchen counter. Her hands fluttered to her pearl necklace, adjusting it unnecessarily. "Your father and I always believed in you, you know?" I poured her a cup of coffee without responding. The silence stretched between us. "Madison's having a hard time with sponsors," she finally said, staring into her cup rather than meeting my eyes. "Some issue with her follower count. Technical things I don't understand." "I see," I replied, keeping my voice even. "Family supports family, Alexandra." Mom reached across the counter to touch my hand. I didn't pull away, but I didn't reciprocate either. "We've always been there for each other, haven't we?" Later that afternoon, Dad made his approach. He caught me retrieving mail from my box, his timing too perfect to be coincidental. "Your mother misses you," he said without preamble. "We all do. We should put this behind us and move forward as a family." I nodded politely, sorting through envelopes. "I'm open to that possibility, Dad." His relief was palpable, but premature. That evening my phone lit up with a barrage of texts from Madison. "You're destroying this family." Mom cried all afternoon. "Everyone thinks you're so selfish. After everything they did for you." I placed the phone face down on my coffee table and returned to reviewing client portfolios. The messages continued to arrive, each vibration less affecting than the last. The next morning, Mom called to inform me that Aunt Patricia asked about my absence at Sunday dinner. "Everyone's concerned about the family image," she said. "People are talking." Dad followed up with a voicemail suggesting my business success seemed awfully sudden and questioning whether I'd gotten involved with something questionable. The final salvo came in the form of a formal dinner invitation, delivered by hand to my mailbox. Elegant script on cream cardstock requested my presence at the family home tomorrow evening at 7 to reconcile our differences. And the postscript, in Mom's handwriting, "After all we've done for you growing up." Alone that night, doubt crept in during the quiet hours. Old patterns of guilt surfaced like well-worn paths in my mind. Perhaps I was being too harsh. Perhaps there was some middle ground where I could maintain both peace and dignity. The next morning, Chloe arrived with bagels and brutal honesty. "Remember the laptop money?" she asked, spreading cream cheese with unnecessary force. $800 you saved from diner shifts, and they took it for Madison's camera equipment?" I winced at the memory. "That was 13 years ago," I said, though the sting felt fresh. "Patterns don't change unless people do," Chloe replied. After she left, I pulled out the journals I'd kept since childhood. Page after page documented the same cycle, my achievements minimized, my needs secondary, my resources commandeered for Madison's dreams. The realization settled into me with surprising calm. Their love was always conditional. Mine doesn't have to be. I arrived at my parents' house at precisely 7 the next evening. The table was set with the good china. Madison sulked at her place setting while Mom fussed with flower arrangements and Dad poured wine with too careful precision. "Alexandra," Mom exclaimed with excessive brightness. "You came." I took my seat, my posture relaxed but dignified. The difference was immediately apparent. I wasn't the daughter desperately seeking approval. I was a successful woman who had chosen to be here on my terms. Madison attempted several barbs throughout the salad course. Not everyone can buy their way into feeling important, she muttered. I met her gaze steadily. You're right. Some people have to earn it. Her fork clattered against her plate. When the main course was served, Dad cleared his throat meaningfully. The moment for reconciliation had apparently arrived, according to their schedule. I needed to build my own life, I said before they could begin their prepared speeches. You needed me to remain invisible. Those two things weren't compatible. Mom's hand froze midway to her water glass. Alexandra, I'm open to a relationship, I continued calmly, but not one based on what you can take from me. The silence that followed was profound. What does that mean exactly? Dad finally asked, his tone careful. I explained, with the precision of someone who had prepared thoroughly, how I built my business over years of work, how I paid for my education through scholarships and side jobs, how I attempted, repeatedly, to share my successes, only to have them dismissed or ignored. That spreadsheet hobby, I quoted back to them, is now worth millions. Madison's face contorted with something between rage and envy. For the first time, she saw the difference between her bot followers and my earned success. The knowledge visibly burned. Mom attempted to redirect. Speaking of your business success, Alexandra, perhaps you could help with family finances, just until Madison gets back on her feet? The trap was sprung, but not as she intended. From my purse, I removed a folder containing documentation of every instance they took from me, from the laptop savings to college fund withdrawals for Madison's headshots. Dad began to protest, but his words died as I showed him his own signature on a withdrawal slip from my college account. Madison launched into a tantrum about fairness and family loyalty that exposed her entitlement more clearly than any argument I could make. Through it all, I remained composed. The family narrative collapsed around us, but I did not gloat or rage. There's no satisfaction in watching them confront reality, only the quiet relief of finally being seen. I'm willing to have a relationship based on mutual respect, I said when the storm subsided. That includes financial boundaries. I won't support anyone without accountability. I turned to Madison. You can apologize genuinely and we can build something new, or you can maintain your position and we'll maintain our distance. My parents sat stunned, facing consequences perhaps for the first time. You gave me an ultimatum about my room, I said, rising from the table. I chose freedom. I left without tears or anger, walking the short distance across the street to my own home. From my front porch, the family house was clearly visible, windows glowing with artificial warmth. Eli appeared at his upstairs window. I raised my hand in a small wave, an offering of connection separate from our parents. He returned the gesture, his expression thoughtful. One by one, the lights in my parents' house went dark as I stood on my porch. My own home remained illuminated, warm with the light of independence. I heard through neighborhood whispers that Madison's career collapse had accelerated. Her fake follower scheme exposed, sponsorships withdrawn, her influencer dreams crumbling. Meanwhile, my parents faced the prospect of financial ruin, their resources depleted by years of supporting Madison's illusions. I watched the for sale sign being hammered into their lawn the following week, feeling neither victory nor remorse, only the quiet certainty that some lessons come at a higher price than others. The morning sun streamed through my kitchen window, casting golden light across the countertop. 6 months had passed since that Sunday dinner ultimatum, and what once felt like an act of defiance now simply felt like home. I cradled my coffee mug and stepped onto the front porch, breathing in the crisp autumn air. My house, not my parents' house, not my childhood bedroom, but my house, had transformed from an empty statement into a true sanctuary. The living room walls, once bare, now displayed framed awards from the Columbus Business Association, including last month's Emerging Entrepreneur Honor. My consulting firm had grown to 5 employees, all working remotely, but gathering monthly in my converted dining room for strategy sessions. Across the street, the curtains remained drawn at my parents' house. The for sale sign had appeared weeks ago, shortly after Madison's final sponsored post announced her career transition into entry-level marketing. I took another sip of coffee, surprised by how little satisfaction I felt at their financial troubles. The revenge fantasy had burned itself out, leaving something quieter and more valuable in its place. Morning, Alexandra. Mrs. Henderson called from her driveway next door. Those moms on your steps are gorgeous. I waved back, still unused to being visible in this neighborhood where I'd been a shadow for 27 years. Inside, I checked my watch. 3 hours until the housewarming party. The irony wasn't lost on me that the dining table where my parents had delivered their ultimatum now stood in my home, repurposed for celebration instead of control. I'd bought it at their hastily organized estate sale, paying twice its value while Madison glared from the porch. The doorbell rang and Eli stood on my doorstep holding a potted plant. "You're early," I said, stepping aside to let him in. "Thought you might need help setting up." He set the plant down, hands in pockets. At 19, his shoulders had straightened, his voice deepened. Community college had been good for him. "Place looks amazing." "Thanks for coming," I squeezed his arm. Our relationship had been the unexpected gift in all this, the slow construction of a real sibling bond built on mutual respect rather than shared childhood wounds. "Remember when Dad asked where you saw yourself in 5 years? Eli asked, arranging chairs around the living room. "At that dinner?" I nodded, unpacking the catering delivery. "Where do you see yourself now?" he asked. The question landed differently this time. Before, it had been a challenge, a demand for justification. Now it felt like genuine curiosity. "Building something that matters," I said. "Not just the business, but a life where I don't need anyone's approval to know my worth." Last week, I'd found my childhood journal while unpacking the final box of belongings. On the last page, I'd written, "The room they wanted to take became the foundation for the life I built." The words felt like a bridge between past and future, acknowledging the pain without letting it define me. By noon, my house filled with voices. Chloe arrived first, throwing her arms around me. "To building your own house, literally and figuratively," she toasted, raising her glass. Marjorie Klein came next, her realtor's portfolio tucked away, attending now as a friend. My business partners followed, bringing clients who'd become allies. The room buzzed with conversations about future projects and expansion plans. Between conversations, I slipped into my office to finalize the scholarship paperwork, a fund for business students from challenging family backgrounds. Yesterday, I'd mentored a young woman whose father had belittled her career ambitions, watching recognition dawn in her eyes when I shared my story. "Your worth isn't determined by those who can't see it," I'd told her. I helped Eli submit his engineering program application last week, his talent for numbers finally finding direction after years in Madison's shadow. Evening found me watering plants on the front porch as Madison's small U-Haul pulled up across the street. She was moving to an apartment downtown, smaller than she'd planned, but better than nothing. Our parents loaded the last of their belongings into their sedan, the house emptied before the bank foreclosure. I raised my hand in a small wave as they glanced my way. Not forgiveness, exactly, but acknowledgement. They had told me to give up my room, so I built a company inside it and bought a home across the street. That night, I stood in my bedroom doorway, surveying the space that was undeniably mine. No one could take it. No one could diminish it. My business continued to grow, creating opportunities not just for me but for others. The relationship with my parents remained distant, with boundaries firmly in place, though perhaps someday healing might be possible if they changed. I slipped between cool sheets in the master bedroom, watching moonlight pattern the ceiling. For the first time in my life, I slept without wondering if I was enough. Have you ever had to choose between pleasing family and standing up for yourself? Alexandra learned that sometimes the greatest act of self-respect is setting boundaries. What would you have done in her situation? Share your thoughts below.